What's going on, everybody? So, ordinarily, when I make a video like the video that I just made on this channel, a video talking about some big Seahawks news, I like to let that video just sit up for at least a few hours on its own and just kind of wait for more information to come out if the news story is such that we need more information. Usually, I like to let things simmer for a little bit, but already in the not even an hour since I posted that video, we've learned quite a bit about this whole Geno Smith thing. And I got to be honest, each thing that we are learning on the way to really peeling back the layers on this trade is making me pretty unhappy. It's making me pretty it's actually kind of making me angry. So, I got to make another video here. Call this like an addendum to my addendum, I think would be how you pronounce that, to the previous video. And we got some stuff to talk about here. And I got to be perfectly honest, from my perspective, none of it is good. So let's look at a few things here. So first of all, we got to talk about the trade itself. And look, in the video that I made initially, I was okay with the compensation. I wasn't over the moon about it, but I was like, that's all right, I guess. It was a pick in the top 70. And look, I'm a big Geno Smith fan. I think that he is, for the moment, a franchise quarterback. I think that he is, for the moment, one of the better quarterbacks in the league. But I also understand that he's a little bit older. And I understand that he's having issues getting away from his shadow, which is his reputation from before he was the Seahawks starting quarterback. A lot of people still look at him as Geno Smith from the Jets or Geno Smith from the Giants, Chargers, where he was a backup. I understand that, so I know you're not going to get top of the line value for him. Like if you had a quarterback who had a good career from his rookie year on, and then he had exactly the same last 3 seasons that Geno Smith just had, I think you'd get more for him in a trade because he's not outrunning that shadow. And I think that's stupid, but it is what it is. So I looked at that and was like, okay, that's a reasonable trade. Now we're learning that's not the trade. So according to Mike Garofalo here, and we are getting some conflicting information, we don't know for sure yet. According to him, it's not the Raiders' native third round pick. It's the pick they got in the Devontae Adams trade. So he's saying we're getting 92. We're getting a late third round pick, barely even a third round pick, barely in the top 100. And I'm sorry, that's not right. This is going to flip me right back over to getting angry about this whole thing. This is going to flip me right back over to being extremely annoyed by this. You are trading with Pete Carroll and you can't get a real asset? Like, okay, for those of you who maybe don't understand where I'm coming from here, first of all, yes, I do think there is a noticeable difference between an early third and a late third round pick. I do think there is a difference there, and one has me just kind of shrugging my shoulders and being like, whatever. The other one makes me angry. And if you are wondering why, if you're currently sitting there thinking like, hey, I still think that's a fair trade, let me remind you of what the compensation was last season when the Steelers traded Kenny Pickett. The Steelers traded Kenny Pickett to the Eagles for a third round pick. They also had to give back a fourth round pick. They also got 2 future seventh round picks. That's whatever. That's just like a little tip on the top. I'm not going to act like that's a big deal. So, to recap, the Steelers gave up Pickett and a fourth round pick for Kenny Pickett and got a third round pick back. So, what we got for Geno Smith is slightly more than what the Steelers got for Kenny Pickett when Kenny Pickett was being traded to be a backup to a quarterback that had a $250 million contract. The Eagles didn't trade for Kenny Pickett because they believed in him and they thought, oh, this is going to be a really good quarterback for us. This is going to be somebody who's going to be our franchise guy. We believe in him. We think he's underrated. No, they traded for him because they needed a backup quarterback. There was no thought that Kenny Pickett's going to take over the starting job anytime soon. They had already paid Jalen Hurts. They had already been to a Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. So they weren't trading for him as like a real valued asset. They just wanted a young, intriguing backup quarterback. Geno Smith is going to the Raiders, and he's going to be their starting quarterback 99 times out of 100. So if you're telling me the Steelers get just a little bit less for Kenny Pickett, and I know people are going to say Kenny Pickett's young. Well, who cares? Kenny Pickett isn't good at football. Okay, isn't that more important here? If the goal was to get a bunch of players that are young, that'd be really easy. Just cut the whole team and sign a bunch of 3-year-olds every offseason. You'll win the Super Bowl every year. Except no, the goal is not to get younger. The goal is to get better. You want good players, not just young players. So that bugs me. If this is true, I think I'm going to have to take back a lot of the things that I said in my previous video. I said in that video that I wasn't that unhappy about it, and I thought it was okay. I didn't like the big picture, but I understood the little picture. This is not okay. This is not right. So we also learned this. This is Albert Breer here. He tweeted, and I saw this from a couple other places as well. The Seahawks and Geno Smith were far apart in negotiations, with Seattle closer to around $35 million per and Smith's camp around $45 million per. That precipitated the trade to the Raiders. So, here's the thing. Now, I know that a lot of people would look at $45 million per year for Geno Smith as being not right. I think it would be uncomfortable, but that would be within my boundaries of acceptability, barely, admittedly, barely. I'm going to go ahead and admit that. But if we're at 35 and he's at 45, you can't tell me you can't find a way to meet in the middle at 40 or 41 or something like that. So for me personally, 40 million, I'm willing to do that. I'm not thrilled about it. I'm not jumping up and down about it. And I can understand why the Seahawks wouldn't be, but at a certain point, the price is the price. Do you want a good quarterback? Or do you just want to keep swapping back and forth between cheap quarterbacks every year and see how far that gets you? So I'm not going to get too much into that because that's subjective. I know some Seahawks fans would say Smith at $45 million per year is unacceptable, and it's not great, okay? I kind of get that angle on it. But here's the thing. If we're taking a look at the timeline here, because let's go back to the DK Metcalf trade that seems to be imminent now. So Diana Rossini, this tweet's from the House Call Sports, but Diana Rossini had the initial report about the DK Metcalf trade demands. He talked about a few things that he wanted. He wanted to get paid $30 million, which, by the way, again, I want to stress, objectively speaking, $30 million a year on Metcalf is fairly reasonable. He wanted warm weather. That's whatever. Everybody wants warm weather, I think. Unless you're one of the vampires from Twilight or something. Stable quarterback situation. Now, this statement came out yesterday, and what I saw from a lot of people, and I saw this even immediately after the trade deadline, because there are some people out there who are so simple-minded, they filter everything through this stance of Geno Smith is bad, and everything that happens to this team, no matter what, is being filtered through that lens because they're so simple-minded. You look at something like this, and I took away the exact opposite from what DK Metcalf supposedly wanted. He wanted a stable quarterback situation, and my thinking was, he doesn't know if Geno Smith is going to be the quarterback next year. That's why he's asking out. He wants to know. He wants to know that either Geno Smith or a similar or better or maybe slightly lesser quarterback is going to be there. He doesn't want to be sitting there not knowing. If you guys like basketball, it's kind of like Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving requested a trade from Cleveland because LeBron refused to commit long-term to Cleveland. He kept signing one-year deals over and over and over again. Kyrie didn't want to sign long-term with Cleveland because he was like, what if LeBron leaves 1 year and then I'm just stuck here in Cleveland trying to carry this team, probably not even making the playoffs because LeBron just left us high and dry. I didn't want to deal with that. I've kind of felt the same way about this too, but now you look at the timeline here, because we know that trade negotiations between Geno Smith and the Seahawks broke down, and DK was probably aware of that when he asked for this trade, that it was obviously not going anywhere good. So initially, my thought was the Seahawks tried to trade Geno Smith because they realized they were going to have to trade DK Metcalf. Now it seems to me that the timeline is The Seahawks cannot find a way to agree to a contract with Geno Smith, so DK Metcalf now asks out. So it's basically the other way around. What I'm saying is that if the Seahawks had come to some kind of arrangement with Geno Smith on an extension, and DK Metcalf knew that Geno Smith would be his quarterback for at least the next couple of years, he probably would have not requested the trade. He doesn't want to sit there and be like, well, is Sam Howell going to be my quarterback next year? Is Sam Darnold? Is Geno Smith? Is some rookie? Is Aaron Rodgers going to be my quarterback? He didn't want to sit there and deal with that. He wanted to know, even if it's somewhere like, I don't think he's going to go to Green Bay. I don't think he's getting traded to Green Bay because of the weather and because of the circumstances regarding what the Packers are offering. But at least if you go to Green Bay, you know Jordan Love's your quarterback for a while. And I don't think Jordan Love is all that great. I'm not a big Jordan Love guy, not a big fan. But at least you know he's your quarterback, and you know he's pretty good. You know he's at least all right. He can play. So, same with Buffalo. You know Josh Allen's going to be your quarterback. Kansas City, you know Mahomes is going to be your quarterback. And look, those quarterbacks are definitely better than Geno, but the word that I thought was notable here was stable. He just wants to know who it's going to be, and he wants to know it's somebody better than just some random guy you chuck in there because you're trying to get the season over with. So that's kind of what I took away from it, and I got to admit, I like that less. That feels like John Schneider got caught with his pants down a little bit here. That feels like John Schneider had a plan, and then things were more expensive than he thought, so now he's desperately pivoting. I'm sorry. That's how I feel, and I'm sticking to it. So I'm having a very, very hard time seeing this from a perspective that makes Schneider look anything other than incompetent. And I can't say I like my team being run by someone who seems incompetent. Now, again, I will acknowledge that $45 million per year for Geno Smith would be uncomfortable. It would be. Maybe he's right to not be willing to do that, but at the same time, I'm looking at this. If we're at 35, he's at 45, you meet in the middle at 40, I think there should be some way to get that done, and it doesn't seem like that was getting done. And I'm going to say it again. We live in a world where guys like Jared Goff are making $50 million a year. Guys like Tua are making $50 million a year. Maybe that's not right, but would you rather have one of those guys? Sam Darnold is probably going to get somewhere around 40 to 45 million this offseason. Do you want that guy? So at a certain point, you need to be willing to play the game. And if you're not willing to play the game, then maybe you should find a new line of work. So the process here, it doesn't seem to me the Seahawks made a decision to just say, we're going to blow it up a little bit. We're going to reset on 2025. It seems to me that they were planning to go for it in 2025. And then they got sticker shock at Geno Smith and apparently DK Metcalf, I guess. And now they're just scrambling. So hard for me to get excited about that. That does not make me feel good. Final thing is, everybody and their mother has been reporting for the last hour that the Seahawks are going after Sam Darnold to replace Geno Smith. Some people are even calling it probable. I already said this in my last video. You guys have not seen me upset before. You will see me upset if we spend the money that would have gone to a Geno Smith extension on Sam Darnold. Does anybody harbor any illusions about what Sam Darnold would look like behind this offensive line? And before you say, oh, we're going to spend a bunch of money on the offensive line, all that money just went to Sam Darnold. He's probably going to cost as much, maybe even more than Geno Smith. It's going to be in the same ballpark almost certainly. So, no, you don't save any money. You just get a worse quarterback, not even as well equipped to play behind a crap offensive line as Geno Smith was. Geno Smith proved he could be decent behind a really bad offensive line. Darnold, when he was put behind a bad offensive line in that Rams playoff game, was incompetent. And throughout most of his career, he's looked incompetent. He had one good year with Kevin O'Connell as his head coach, who is considered to be one of the best offensive minds in football right now, with playing with Justin Jefferson and an above-average offensive line, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but if this is the plan, this is even worse. I'm not enthusiastic about this reset thing right now, really, but I'm even less enthusiastic about this. This is something that would make me really lose faith in anything ever being good again here. Okay, so let me know what you guys think. I'm less happy now but we'll see where things go. See you guys later. Go Hawks.